Welcome back to On the Pond Hockey Talk with your host, Adam Steer. Now, finally, the NHL offseason is starting to come to a close. We've seen pretty much all the big fish pick their landing spots. However, there's a few people that have not chosen where to sign yet, including Mike Hoffman and Mikael Granlund. But however, it is now my time to give my winners and losers of the NHL offseason as a whole, because we've seen pretty much the majority of important things happen. So with that being said, guys, before I go through my 4 winners and 4 losers, I want to go through quickly some teams that I don't think it's really fair to give a winning grade to necessarily. And first, that goes to the New York Rangers. Now, of course, they drafted Lafreniere. They won the Laffy sweepstakes, but I'm not going to give them the win in the offseason just because, their ping pong ball emerged victorious among 7 other balls in a lottery. So it's more about, the way I look at this is who did you lose in the offseason versus who did you acquire. So that's kind of how I base my decisions off of who wins and loses free agency. So I can't give the Rangers the W there. Same thing with the Ottawa Senators. They did well in the draft. I mean, they should have taken Jamie Drysdale over Jake Sanderson, but that's just my opinion. Suitsler is going to be a stud, but again, they're going to be a rebuilding team. I can't necessarily give Ottawa the W again there yet. And the last team, guys, that I specifically can't give it to is the Vegas Golden Knights, because while they did add one of the biggest fish, if not the biggest, in Alex Pietrangelo, who signed the 7-year, $8.8 million AAV deal. They lost Nate Schmidt because of it, and they lost Paul Stastny because of it. Getting Pietrangelo was a huge cost in losing Schmidt and Stastny, and not only that, but I feel like there's going to start to become a phenomenon in Vegas where guys are going to get there and they don't know how long they're going to be Golden Knights for. Because when they were trying to clear cap, they were willing to do pretty much anything to get Pietrangelo, and I feel like this rubbed a lot of people in Vegas the wrong way. So we're going to start to see if this is going to start to become a trend moving forward, if people are going to be unhappy playing in Vegas because they don't know how long they're going to be Golden Knights or vice versa. But however, it's going to be interesting to see. So with that being said, guys, we're going to go through my 4 winners and 4 losers. We're going to start off with the winners because we love being positive. So my first winner of free agency has to be the Colorado Avalanche. Now, again, guys, this is not in order. I have my 4 winners. I'm just going to talk about each of them again. So number 1, we got the Colorado Avalanche. Now, I believe Colorado was a winner of free agency because they lost Nikita Zadorov, they lost Vladislav Nemesnikov, they lost Colin Wilson and Matt Nieto. However, Zadorov was the big piece that they did lose. I mean, he was playing pretty solid minutes for the Avalanche. Nemesnikov was a trade deadline acquisition. They gave up a 4th to get him from the Sens. So again, not really a huge loss. They can find guys like that in free agency. But then I look at who did they add. They added Brandon Saad, who absolutely could be a top 6, top 9 forward for the team. He's going to give them tremendous depth in case anyone gets injured. And just, he can be a rover. He can move up anywhere into the lineup. I think Saad was a great add. I think the Devon Taves trade was a very good add too. I know they gave up 2 seconds. People were kind of questioning it, but Devon Taves' analytics are through the roof, and the way he plays hockey is exactly what Colorado needs. A stable defenseman. He's not going to make mistakes. He'll contribute on offense too if he's needed to. And I just think this was a really solid move. I mean, he's making $4.1 million AAV over the next 4 years. And I think this is an absolutely great move for them. So looking back, they did get Saad, they did get Taves, and they did lose Nemesnikov and Zadorov. Those were the big pieces. But then I look at what else they did in free agency, and while they did get a lot more than what they lost, they gained definitely more than they subtracted from the team. They were able to re-sign guys like Andrei Burakovsky and Graves and Tyson Jost and Nichushkin, and then they have guys like Bowen Byram and Alex Newhook coming in. So again, they didn't lose that much. They added a ton, and they have a ton coming in too. That's why I got to give Colorado one of my winners of free agency. Next, guys, I have the Buffalo Sabres as a winner of free agency. Now, again, it's going to be very interesting to see how the team does next season. But I think when you look at, again, what did they lose? They lost Marcus Johansson, who kind of didn't fit out in Buffalo. He didn't really fit well with the team. And I'm not surprised that they moved him. I mean, he signed a 2-year, $9 million deal, making $4.5 million a year. So you kind of knew that, after the first year wasn't going to work out, maybe they were going to look at moving him. I mean, he's an easy contract to move because he's on 1-year deal and because of everything he's done in the past, especially on Washington, playing in that supportive cast role. I think that was a very good move for them. So they did trade Marcus Johansson, and they did acquire Eric Stahl. I love that move for them because Eric Stahl is more of a pure center than Marcus Johansson, and Eric Stahl will provide a much bigger need, and he'll be much more stable up the middle of the ice than Johansson would be with Buffalo, and I think having Eichel and Stahl as your top two centers there, I think it's going to be good for Eichel because he's going to know that behind him is going to be Eric Stahl, who's a vet. He knows how to win, and I still think he's going to put up some offensive production with the Sabres for sure. I mean, they got a lot of young pieces coming too on the wings. Olofsson, Sam Reinhart still. He just signed his arbitration deal. Dylan Cousins, again, Jeff Skinner too, even though he's overpaid. I still really like what Buffalo did. Oh, and not to mention, they signed Taylor Hall to a 1-year deal. If you told me Taylor Hall was signing a 1-year deal, I would have said, you are absolutely nuts. You're bananas. But he signed a 1-year deal at $8 million. This is a win-win-win-win and another win for Buffalo because if he works out, great. You sign a long-term deal with him and they finally add more good forwards to the team. If it doesn't work out, hey, you trade him at the deadline. Maybe you get a first-round pick for him. Maybe you get some more assets. It really can't hurt either way. I mean, I really love this move so much. And, they also drafted Jack Quinn, 8th overall, and JJ Peterka early in the second round. They moved up a few spots to get Peterka, and, I like their draft. Quinn at 8, I thought was a little bit of a reach, but, I mean, he was projected to go anywhere from, from what I heard, 6 to 12 or 13. So, I mean, for him to go 8, it was around the ballpark of where he went. He's a very good goal scorer, and Peterka is a very solid all-around player. Definitely has some offensive touch to his game, but I definitely think Buffalo is another winner of free agency for sure. Next, guys, we have the Montreal Canadiens. So, obviously, this is tough to say because, I got my Austin Matthews jersey on. I got my Mitch Marner jersey on in the background. And, I'm not a fan of Montreal at all, but you have to respect what they did in the offseason. The only key piece that they really lost was Max Domi, and they did add Josh Anderson. Now, Domi's more skilled than Josh Anderson. I think overall better player, but I think Josh Anderson fits what Montreal has been looking for in terms of size, speed, and skill. I think they've kind of been lacking that kind of player for the last few years, so getting him was definitely big. And they also added Joel Edmondson on the back end to give them more depth. And they added Jake Allen as a backup goalie, who's going to be one of the best backup goalies in the NHL. And one of my favorite moves of the offseason, they added Tyler Toffoli. So they added a lot of depth up front. They added depth on the back end. They added a backup goalie to back up Carey Price. They have Alex Romanov coming. They have some other prospects, Cole Caulfield. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with some of these guys but in Montreal. But I really do think that they were a winner in free agency based on what they did. They also drafted Caden Gooley, which I liked. The offensive upside's not going to be there with him. But again, Montreal is not going to be a team that is going to need, 80 points out of Caden Gooley. Gooley will give them 30 points, play solid defensive minutes for them, and Montreal will be thrilled. So kudos to Montreal. Marc Bergevin, you had a really good offseason. So proud of you for that. Now, last, guys, this is my last winner of free agency. Now, honestly, it's a very underrated team, I think, and I don't know, they're going to get a lot of flack because they didn't address goaltending, but I really do believe the Edmonton Oilers are a massive winner of free agency. When you look at what they lost, they lost Andreas Athanasiou, they lost Mike Green, but then what did they do otherwise? They were able to somehow, I give Ken Holland a ton of credit here and the Edmonton staff. They salvaged the relationship of Jesse Puljujarvi. For those of you who don't know about Jesse Puljujarvi, he was the 4th overall draft pick in 2016, the same year Austin Matthews, Patrick Laine, and Pierre-Luc Dubois all got drafted in the top 3. Everyone just thought Puljujarvi was going to be a stud. However, it did not work out well to start. Puljujarvi left the team after a few years to go play in Finland. However, Puljujarvi did very well last season in the Finnish Elite League. So I think him coming back to Edmonton and seeing that Edmonton is a strong team that is ready to compete, the fact that they were able to salvage the relationship, because there were so many rumors that he was going to leave Edmonton and go to another team. I really love the fact that they were able to salvage the relationship and bring him back to Edmonton. Next, guys, Kyle Turris going to Edmonton is absolutely huge. Nashville bought him out. They're paying the penalties and all that for the next few years, but Edmonton really took advantage here. I think one of the things Edmonton was really lacking over the last few years was that true third-line center. They had Gaetan Haas and Riley Sheehan and a few other guys. I don't even know if they put Nugent there at one point to start it out. But, they really lack that third-line center. And I think adding Kyle Turris is going to give them a ton more stability, especially when you consider Puljujarvi and now the emergence of Yamamoto. You still have Nuge, not to mention McDavid and Draisaitl. But adding Turris as their true third-line center, that's a right shot, that's, responsible in his own end, can still put up points, I believe. I mean, Kyle Turris is still a really good player. I just don't think he lived up to his $6 million contract, which, I don't blame him for. Listen, not everyone's going to live up to their deals. It didn't work out for Nashville, but Edmonton is a team that's paying him $1.65 million for the next 2 years. You got to respect that they did this, and I think he's going to work out really well. I hope that it works out really well too, because I think this Kyle Turris signing was one of the most underrated things in the entire offseason. And guys, last but not least, the Oilers signed Tyson Barrie again to same with Taylor Hall. They signed Tyson Barrie to a 1-year deal. The fact that they were able to sign Barrie to a 1-year deal, Barrie's going to hopefully want to prove that he is going to take that next step that he kind of did in Colorado. It didn't work out for Toronto last season, but that's okay. He's going to quarterback that power play. This is going to be his chance to prove that, he's a real primetime defenseman, and someone would be lucky to pay him $7-8 million a season. I don't know if that's going to happen, but the fact that they added Tyson Barrie, they added to that decor, considering, Mike Green never really worked out there. He was kind of injured for most of it, didn't play in the bubble in Edmonton, but Tyson Barrie was an absolutely huge ad for them. So kudos to Edmonton. So those are my winners of free agency, guys. So we're quickly going to dive into who I thought were the losers of free agency. And to me, that starts with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, I know people are going to be like, what, Vancouver? Are you nuts? To be honest, listen, they lost Jacob Markstrom. That's okay because they added Holtby. To me, that kind of cancels out in a sense because, if anything, they lose a little bit because Markstrom was putting up Vezina quality numbers. And, that's going to be tough to replace. They're going to be relying a lot on Holtby and a lot on Demko in a full season, so we're going to see how that works out. They also lost Tanev to the Calgary Flames. While they did add Nate Schmidt is an upgrade on Tanev, but they did lose Troy Stecher, who I thought was a very solid player for Vancouver, and I'm surprised that they didn't want to bring him back. Troy Stecher left Vancouver to go to Detroit, who he knows is probably not going to be a competitive team, so I feel like to me that kind of says something that he left Vancouver. And again, the biggest thing, why Montreal benefited and why Vancouver loses. Tyler Toffoli, man. This guy was so good for Vancouver. He was a point-per-game player. They gave up Tyler Madden in the second-round pick to get Tyler Toffoli. So you think, the asset management was really not there with Jim Benning and the Canucks. If you're going to give up all that to get Toffoli, you got to find a way to re-sign him. You got to move a draft pick or two to, unload the Jay Beagle or Antoine Roussel contracts or even Louis Eriksson. Just do something because I think Toffoli was a really strong fit for them. And, they didn't have a first-round pick this year, so they lacked in that area, while other teams did have first-round picks. So, to me, I think they really needed to add Tyler Toffoli. I think their forward depth is lacking now. I think they still need a top-6 forward, someone that can play on that, second line. But, again, we'll see what Vancouver does. They have a few prospects coming up, so we'll see. Next, guys, quickly, we're going to get into it. The Florida Panthers. Listen, they traded Mikey Matheson for Patrick Hornqvist. I don't really love either contract, but the thing is, Patrick Hornqvist is older, so his ceiling is definitely running out. And Florida's not a team that's, we have a window to win the Stanley Cup, and it's the next 2 years, because they still have Huberdeau and Barkov, and they have some young players. But they did lose Dadonov to Ottawa in free agency, and Hoffman still hasn't been signed. Now, to me, if Hoffman was going to sign in Florida, he'd have done it already, and the fact that he didn't was a little bit concerning. So, personally, I have Florida as a loser. They did draft Anton Lundell, which I liked. But the problem is they still have cap space, but they haven't done anything they haven't added people to their team. I feel like they secretly thought they were going to get Pietrangelo, but that didn't work out. So anyways, guys, I have Florida as a loser of free agency. Next, guys, I have Chicago. So I didn't really love Chicago's draft, and I liked the Brandon Zadorov trade, but the thing is that you really got to think about is how it's going to affect the team. And I feel like a lot of the big players in Chicago, like Taves and Kane and Keith and Seabrook, they kind of didn't like that. And the way they got rid of Corey Crawford, I think it really came as a surprise. If they had let them know and notified them, you go up to Johnny Taves and Patty Kane and say, listen, guys, and Duncan Keith even to say, listen, guys, this is what's got to happen. We've had our fun, but it's time to move on. We need to do something new and different. Time to rebuild. I feel like it kind of came as a surprise. And I feel like if they had kind of spoken to them before, maybe that wouldn't have happened. But again, who knows? Lucas Reichel was an okay pick. I think there were definitely other guys that could have picked at that spot, but we'll see how that goes. Lastly, guys, my last loser of free agency is the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, again, who cares that they're a loser in free agency? I don't care, or in the offseason. If the Leafs won the Stanley Cup, I don't care if they were the biggest loser in the offseason because they won the Stanley Cup. They did what they needed to do. Quickly, the thing about Tampa Bay is they are in such cap hell right now. They have no money, and they still need to re-sign Cirelli, Sergachev, and Chernak. They can't even move Tyler Johnson, guys, for anything. So I think the fact that they weren't able to make a move to clear any sort of cap in any way, I think, to me, makes them a loser. But we'll see what happens with these contracts because they really got to do whatever they can to land at least 2 of these guys back because if they don't land them all back, then their team's definitely not going to be as good next season. So Tampa is definitely a loser in mine in free agency, but we will see. All right, guys, so these are my 4 winners and 4 losers of free agency. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If you really enjoyed this video, please hit that like and subscribe button. Tell your friends that are interested in hockey to come check my videos out. I will be posting more videos soon. Have a good day, everyone.